It's really cold outside, and that is ice falling. Hey everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I wanted to show you a journal I just finished. It's made from what was a day book. I really didn't want to use a day book, but I found this book for 25 cents, and I love this picture of Virginia Woolf. It's just one of my favorite pictures ever of anyone. And I've tried to figure out what it is so appealing about this picture. One of the things I notice is that the line here of her chin is almost an exact opposition, or the exact opposite pattern from her hair. So we have this beautiful V right here, and it's just a beautiful profile. It just really, you can't quit looking at it. At least I can't. I think it's really, really beautiful. Virginia Woolf drowned herself. She was very depressed. She put heavy rocks in her pockets, I believe, and walked into the river. It's called the River Ouse, O-U-S-E. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It makes me think about Edith Holden, though. She's got the beautiful illustrations in The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, and she drowned by accident. She fell into the River Thames. So, you know, it's just really sad to think about things like that. But I do love this profile image of Virginia Woolf. On the outside of this, we have a seashell and a couple of vintage buttons. I just love to get out here and use up things that are really beautiful, things that make me happy. What I did was to take out the inside of this book, and I just sewed one signature in with a pamphlet binding stitch with just 3 holes. You can do 5. I'm kind of attached to 3, although sometimes once I get into a journal and start making messes on the pages, I think, oh, why didn't I make 5? But I do like 3 because it seems to catch the smaller pages, and I don't know, it just seems adequate. On the inside, I just glued down 2 rectangles of this canvas sort of fabric. One on the inside and outside, or front and back covers, I should say. And then I cut a piece of this fabric with the butterflies to glue down the center. Glued another piece of pretty fabric on top of the inside cover, and then glued down this old image that I had in some ephemera. It's really beautiful. So here, on the very first page, we have just this little sketch, and this is on a piece of music paper that someone had written some music on. This is from an old music book. This is a piece of vellum that's got, you know, an image printed on it. It's kind of a yellow color. I just stuck this in here basically so that anything wet on here didn't get over here while it was completely drying. There's a little heart-shaped doily that I bought at the Dollar Tree with their Valentine decorations. This is one of the beautiful little cutout images that Sandra sent to me. I love these. And then this is beautiful. One of my favorite things ever. I have just held on to this for so long. I think I have scanned it, but I'm gonna take another picture or another scan just to be safe. I think it's old. I don't know how old. I mean, it could be 70s, it could be 40s. I don't know how old it is, but it was one large cutout or die cut. I don't even remember where I got that. And then on this page, we have some beautiful wrapping paper with a matching tissue paper glued on top. There's a beautiful piece of fabric in here with a lot of the machine stitched embroidery. And then here happens to be a page from a little, like a pamphlet or a flyer about Thomas Woolf. And Jay, I believe you gave this to me in the papers you sent, I think. I'm pretty sure that's where this came from, is you, Jay. And then on this page, I used a stencil, one of my favorites that I bought for 50 cents that has a lot of it's got different shapes of butterflies, bees, and a dragonfly. I don't use the hummingbird so much. I think they're beautiful in nature, but I don't use hummingbirds a lot in my art. And then over here, we have just another really pretty page with the stencil. Everything's really light. It's just done with a lot of water and paint. Now, this is a really old piece of paper from a book that was falling apart. And honestly, I almost threw it in the trash can simply because it is so delicate. But I love that it says the wonders of science, and you can see that it has already torn a tiny bit from being under this rusty paper clip. Here we have just a tiny little strip of paper to make a pocket for this beautiful lady. She was left over from the recent art journal tutorial that I created. And have kind of a flip out page here with some packaging tape, a lot of staining and distressing, a lot of beautiful images. I like Art Nouveau, I love Victorian things, and I love distress, grunge, so I like bringing all of that together. That, of course, is Alphonse Mucha, and then this is one of his paintings. I picked this up when Jay and I went to the North Carolina Museum of Art. This is a postcard I found recently at a thrift store. Another one of my favorite artists, this is Adolphe or Adolphe William Bouguereau. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, and I always have to look up the spelling of that. So listen to this spelling. Bouguereau. This name has got 3 consonants and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vowels. And then this is a pretty page. So this is a little pocket. I had just a beautiful piece of blue fabric floating around, and this is something I cut out from the little souvenir booklet from the Museum of Art at the Mucha exhibit, and just a lot of layers on this page. A trick that I have learned, something that I really, really love, whenever you sew something onto a page to flip out like this, it always, to me, seems to make the paper on the other side too flimsy. It feels like it's not weighted enough to me, like it's just gonna rip right off. So I've gotten to where I always glue something over that stitching, whether it's just one little strip or a bigger strip or the whole page, and it just adds more layering and more texture. And this is another beautiful page with the stencils. I put a butterfly die cut on this page, and there are some other butterfly die cuts throughout this book or journal. And here is a piece of fabric that flips out, really pretty. I love the gold. That's a little, it was a note card, and I just tore the front off and rounded the corners, distressed it a little bit. It's got a beautiful old stamp and a little bit of ink stamping there. That's a page that I used these recently in some fun packs, and this was indeed a fun page to use. It came from an herbal recipe book. Love this. That came just from some of the ephemera I have out here. And then that is a pretty old image that came from a vintage sewing book. So this I really love. These felt flowers were at the Dollar Tree, and I picked up a package of those. They're kind of tall and they're really thick, so you know, there was no way to sew in the center of it, and I just really wasn't in the mood to slow down and sew something on by hand. So I just went around it with the sewing machine. And yes, it stands up a little bit, but it's kind of fun to just lay that in the book and have that hang out like that. I think it's really pretty. This fabric also came from the Dollar Tree. They had these really adorable little pouches, and Jay shared these on her channel as well. I had seen them, but she encouraged me to go back. So this is a vintage calendar that is folded to make a page from 1969. I love the muted colors on this and love that old lettering and numbering. Another one of the postcards from the thrift store, Giovanni Battista Cipriani. This is called Two Angels. Love that. And then this is just a piece of paper that has been a scrap piece and sort of a trial piece on my desk. And here we get to the center. So you can see that I had pulled on this some and gotten it, you know, a little bit wet while working with it. Well, maybe a lot wet. And I did something I've never done before, and I really like the result. I dried the page with my dryer like I always do, but I decided to come back with some paper tape and just put it right in the center of the book. So it's covering up those binding cords completely. And I love this, I really do. It helped to sturdy up the page after it dried, and you know, this paper tape is so sturdy. It's used for packaging. I don't know if you can really get a good look at it, but in addition to being heavy paper and having this adhesive, all you have to do is wet it. You can see the thread that runs through the paper. So it's really, really strong tape. And then more of that old calendar, and we've got the stamp. There's some gold paint splattered on here, and gold paint throughout on the edges of the pages. And there's another one of those beautiful postcards. I ended up cutting it down, and here's just some scrap paper from things that have been going on the desk. And just, that's a stamp that I have. It's just polka dots, and I love to get the stamp wet, even if there's just old ink from last time. It ends up making a really pretty distressed page. A little bit of scribbling here, and then we have another picture of Virginia Woolf that was in the inside of this book of days, and the butterfly here. Lots of space to write in here, and just lots of layers. And something I did on these heart-shaped doilies, I laid them down and just painted the top with some inked up water, you know, like this turns into. And then I dried it with the hair dryer, and I added extra ink if I felt like it on some of these, and then just dried it, and it ends up being really pretty. This is probably the least worked on page in the journal, you know, these two. And I may come back and do something to these. I don't know. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with this journal. And this flips out. You can see sort of a faded stamp of a bird cage under there. And once again, I've glued the paper on top of those stitches to make everything more sturdy. I think this is my favorite thing in the book. This butterfly is just absolutely gorgeous. And then along this page, you can see I sewed some lace that's really ragged on this end because it was just torn off of something. That's really pretty. And then I went back with a zigzag stitch and sewed this little beaded trim into place. I think it's really pretty. And that's what this looks like. And then we have the other half of that fabric. That's more of the page from Thomas Woolf, from one of his manuscripts, I believe. And another one of the doilies, part of a stamp here. And then the inside cover has just got a piece of fabric. I like these layers. And on the back, to cover up the back of the book, and this can get tricky when you're using one of these shiny books with this really smooth, slick finish. It's hard to get rid of this finish. I sanded the outside of this with a sand block, and then I glued the fabric on with tacky glue, knowing that it might not stick, and it didn't. It completely dried, and then the whole thing just peeled off like a charm. I mean, it made the most beautiful, smooth layer of dry, slick tacky glue on the back of this. But I want it on the book, and I want it to stay on the book. So I went back and sanded some more and took my scissors and like scratched up the back of the book to try to give it some tooth so that this would grab, and I used a super glue for that at that time. So I'm hoping that it's gonna stay. It's not completely dry yet, so I don't want to start messing with it. I'm just gonna leave that. I put quite a bit in there. We will see tomorrow if it peels right off. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll have to go to a different plan. I think if you sanded down far enough, something would stick, because you just need to get past this surface, but I wasn't able to do that with just the sanding block out here. And my sanding block's kind of worn out too. Okay, well that is that. I really love this book. I think it's so beautiful. Just felt really good to sit down and just work with things that brought me joy and made me feel happy. This time of the year can be a little bit of a downer because we're coming down from the holidays. A lot of people have Christmas decorations that have to be put away. The weather suddenly gets really gray and cold here. And while we might have had some beautiful days in December, suddenly it's cold, it's winter. So I think to just do something that you love and be gentle with yourself as far as expecting this or that. Decide, you know, if you don't like something, don't work with it. Just try to do things that make you feel happy and joyful. Okay, I'm gonna go for now. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back really soon. Bye for now.